Hey guys, welcome back and thanks for tuning in to my review of the Bradford Knives Guardian 4. This one in stonewashed S30V and micarta. Just a beautiful knife. We're going to talk all about it, show you lots of footage of it in use, compare it to a handful of other knives sort of in its size and category, and also talk about some other Bradford knives, at least one other one. There's a lot of Bradford knives we could talk about. If we just stuck to the Guardian 4, I don't know if we could go through all the SKUs. There are so many different versions of it. We've got handle scales that have that more G10 checkered appearance to them, and then these sort of sculpted micarta and the, what do they call it? I think you call it a G wood, which is a sort of a G10 with a wood appearance to it. They've also got carbon fiber handle scales as well. So, and in addition to that, obviously, like multiple different steel types. S30V is this one, as I said before. They've also got M390, 3V. There may be some others. And again, the coatings. There's this stonewash coating, and then there's also a sort of black stonewash coating, which is a bit extra, but also very cool. So, like I said before, so many different versions of the Bradford Guardian 4 that we could talk about. We're going to try to keep it to this S30V version, but a lot of what I have to say is going to apply to all the other varieties as well. I mentioned that we're going to show one other Guardian or one other Bradford knife. Might as well show that now. You know, the guys over at Bradford sent me this knife to play with, to review. They were very patient in waiting for this review. They sent this knife to me over 6 months ago, as I recall. It's been a long time. If you follow me on Instagram, you've been seeing pictures of this since, what was it, fall 2016? Yeah, something like that. So I've had this knife in hand and been using it for quite a while. So they were generous enough to send me this one to use with the sheath, the leather sheath there, as well as a really nice Kydex sheath to go with it. That's my tech lock on the back there. I believe that's mine. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I put that on there. Awesome Kydex sheath as well. But I love this knife so much, I went out and bought myself a Guardian 3 for EDC carry. Just love it. And this is what I was talking about before. This is the sort of G10 checkered pattern that they do, which is really nice looking. Lots of leather there stuck to the handle, as you can tell. But same, stonewash blade finish on this one. I just really like it. This one with the swedge cut out on the top, and that one without. So they've got a couple different varieties there. And again, that's what I'm talking about when I say there's so many different SKUs of these Bradford knives that we could go through, when we're not obviously going to do that. But yeah, this one is also really cool. I've been carrying this one as an everyday carry belt sheath, or a belt knife in the belt sheath, for a good little while now. And I love it, man. Fits in the belt so nicely. It's very comfortable to walk around with and wear. Hides very nicely under t-shirts, button-up shirts, whatever. And as long as you're not tucking stuff in, you can hide that very easily. What is that? I don't know what that is. Let me get the ruler out right now. Might as well show you. 7.5 or so inches from the bottom of the handle to the tip of that leather sheath. That's not bad. On most people's frames, that will hide pretty easily under t-shirts, and definitely for me, it hides very easily. So I've been carrying that and using it for a while. We may address that again in a minute, but I love that knife. And so, again, I loved the Guardian 4 so much after they sent it to me and had been playing with it for a while that I needed to get myself a Guardian 3, so I purchased that one myself from friends over at Blade HQ. So check them out, and I'll have links, of course, to this and that other knife down below. So let's get to some of the review, talk about some of the use that I put it through and how I've been using it. I did take it on my coyote hunt. You saw that with my friend Cody, Desert Defense. You didn't see the knife in the video because I only use it to harvest the tail, but I'll roll in a little bit of footage of that for those that want to see it and aren't too grossed out too quickly. But yeah, so this knife went with me on that trip. Nice to carry around. I will say this, that in the use that I put it through on that trip, I made the mistake of putting that tip into the dirt as I was cutting that tail. Now, that actually did bend ever so slightly, but I was able to bring it back pretty easily. I don't think I even had to use the belt at all, use the work sharp knife and tool sharpener. All I think it did was put it on my Spyderco sharp maker, just gave it a few passes and brought that tip back very nicely. You really can't tell that anything happened to it at this point. It's still doing great. Speaking of tip, that thing drilled away at some wood very nicely. Okay, it was a very strong tip, even though it seems like it will be quite delicate. Their treatment of S30V is extraordinarily good, giving us a nice strong tip. And speaking of the edge retention, this thing cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts and carves and carves and carves. It just keeps going. And that edge stays really sharp for a long, long time. It's only now beginning to get marginally not razor sharp, but it's still extraordinarily good. And I could easily cut myself with this if I'm not careful. And so, gosh, that edge is going to retain into something that's very, very good and utility useful, if not shaving sharp, for a really long time. So as an outdoors knife, as a hiking knife, camping knife, a backpacking knife, this thing is going to survive a lot of use for multiple days, no problem. As a hunting knife as well. Maybe it's not ideal for skinning, but a lot of guys can use different techniques and can get work done with whatever knife they're handed. And so this could easily be good for that as well. We might as well address one thing that I consider a slight drawback. Now, this is also part of what adds to the aesthetic and the coolness of this knife, and that is this giant finger choil right here, okay, that allows me to choke way up on that. I've got the grip panels here in my palm, in my hand, back here, which, gives me all the purchase I need to do all the work I want to do. But I've also got this huge choil up here, which enables me to get really close to the work that I'm doing and, have extremely good control over my edge and over my knife, which is great. I love that. It can be a slight downside, though, to some folks. If you prefer to have, a little more grip all the way out to here and maybe even some kind of a quillion protecting your finger from that edge, you don't get that with the Guardian knives. In every other way that I can think of, this is a great knife ergonomically, carved and cut away with it for a long, long time, and felt like it performed extremely well. I'll mention one last thing. I did experience this, and you can't see it anymore because it's been a while, but in working with that knife and choking up to do some carving with that, I did just barely nick my knuckle right there on the inside. I did do that one time. Now, after that, I pulled back. I pulled my finger back like this, and it was never a problem again. But just one time, got complacent, managed to nick myself right there. So for those of you who are really, really concerned, again, you'll have to make some decisions about that. But in my opinion, it's workable. It's doable. This is a spoon I carved. I used multiple knives to work on this, both to contour it, contouring the handle, contouring the bottom of the bowl, and for the most part, digging out the bowl itself was all done with this Guardian 4. And you can see some of that in footage. Now, how did I make that work? It was just very painstaking. I just kept kind of digging and slicing and carving away from all different directions, getting that bowl deeper and deeper and deeper and continuing to kind of carve away at it until it seemed to, get to the depth that I wanted it at. Once it started to get to that depth, I was, kind of shaping it and making it the sort of concave bowl that it needed to be in order to be a useful spoon. I kept doing that as I went, and it's still a little rough, certainly, and if I had sandpaper, if I had dedicated tools designed for carving out a bowl, this would certainly not be a slightly splintered bowl, as you can probably see that it is. It would actually be a very smooth piece, and that's great. But that's generally not what I would bring into the field. And if I find myself short on eating utensils and I need to make something, I'm going to make the roughest piece that I need to make in order to get the job done. I'm not going to make it all ornate. I'm going to get it done and get full of food and be happy. And if I have time later, I'll make it a little more polished, a little smoother, or whatever. But for the most part, this is a functional, useful spoon. And all the critical work was done. with this knife right here. So if you're curious about sort of how that knife point, that tip, that belly, all of that can work in doing some general utility work, this knife has got it all. It can do it all. Of course, I also took it out, made sure that it could survive a little bit of batoning. Didn't put it through a whole ton of that, just enough to get a feel for it. Doesn't have a huge span to it, but you can see that because of the fact that the grip is pulled way back here, with that choil still extending past the end of the grip, because of that, you've got a little more blade than you might have otherwise, a little more flat surface to pass through some of your wood than you might have otherwise. And so you can sort of span slightly larger and slightly thicker and wider logs and sticks in order to split them down to either make into kindling for fire prep, to make into tent pegs, as I did a couple of those with this knife as well, which is also a super easy thing to do. Carving, cutting from all different directions, doing these little chest pulls where you kind of lever it out from the center of your chest. Not hard to do with this knife. I didn't find any problems with that. I could grip it properly and safely and get those very powerful cuts done with this knife without any difficulty. And of course, getting that fine detail work done, cutting the little tab at the end of my stake so that I would be able to stake down a rope or whatever it was. That also went just fine. It was very easy to do. So detail work, power work, hard work, this knife can do it all. This is something that you can carry with you to a lot of places you might not carry one of these really large knives that has more capabilities. Obviously, we got to balance what capabilities we want with what we're able to easily carry. And I think that this knife, the 4-inch range, is actually a great range for having a good balance of capability and portability. So 6.4 is what we got. I said 6.5. Throw the leather sheath on top of that. We've got 8.5, it looks like. Now, if we did the Kydex sheath with the Tech Lock instead, that puts us at about almost 11 ounces. So that's about what our weight's going to be. It's pretty doable. Again, the knife itself, just about 6.5 ounces. So pretty good. Should we go ahead and compare this to a handful of other knives? Let's do it. We didn't mention price yet, so let's throw that out there. The Guardian 4, as you see it in CPM S30V and micarta, I think that this one would come in at, I want to say, 230, 240. The ranges are very, very varied, if I can just say that. It's a very kind of weird way to phrase things, but that's exactly what it is. Going from the different types of, they have the G10 in this sort of checkered pattern, and they've got the Guardian 4 in this G10. Going from that one on up, you're looking at, and in the sort of the cheapest steel as well, which I think would be S30V, you're looking at $219, a starting point for this knife, all the way up to about $300, and that would be the black stonewash carbon fiber M390 version. So you can pay pretty much anywhere in between $220 and $300 for one of these Guardian 4s, and that comes with the leather sheath. The Kydex sheath, again, they sent me that one, so I'm not quite certain how you go about getting one of those. Perhaps you special order it. Don't know exactly. But the leather sheath is absolutely adequate, in my opinion. If you're planning on carrying that straight up and down, as most people will, it holds the knife very nicely and retains it pretty well. Gives enough space there in the loop for that to kind of swivel back and forth, and to so as you're sitting down, as you're kneeling down, as you're moving, this is not too rigid on your belt, and you don't sacrifice any comfort. So that's important. The blade grind on it is great. It's a nice flat grind, sort of a saber grind on it, which is great for all kinds of work. Felt like it did a fantastic job, like I said before, on everything that I had it do. The edge itself has got fantastic geometry to it, which enables some really fine carving. It came razor sharp, hair popping sharp, about as sharp as any knife I've ever owned. And that was extremely satisfying. I love seeing a razor sharp knife right out of the package. So that's tops. Perfect. Let's compare it to a couple of other knives. I think we said we were going to do that, so let's get on that. Again, the price starting at $219 for the Bradford Guardian 4. Let's bring in, how about this guy right here? This is the Tops Tex Creek 69. And this one comes in at, I want to say 125-ish. That also comes with a leather sheath, very reminiscent of the one that the Guardian 4 comes with. Very similar design, as you can tell there. This one coming up a little further to complement probably the way that handle is oriented and designed. Bringing things down in price quite a bit. How about this? If you just want some good utility, you're not concerned so much about looks and aesthetics and all that kind of stuff, and you're okay to sacrifice and get kind of cheaper steel as well. How about that right there? There's the Mora Bushcraft Black. This version coming with the hard plastic sheath, the diamond sharpener on it, as well as the striker. So different versions of that, you can get down from like 65 down to like 45, depending on which type you want to have. And then moving down from there, or roughly down from there, how about this guy, the Gerber Strong-Arm? This is far more sort of military targeted, but for those of you who just want a nice, solid outdoors knife, something that will get lots of different kinds of work done and be pretty darn thick as well, this knife is a winner at just 50 bucks. 420 HC steel, and for the money, again, about 50 bucks or so. Yeah, real good. So there's a quick comparison of a handful of other knives and how they sort of stack up to the Guardian 4. Guardian 4, in my opinion, is one of these knives that's going to stick around in my collection indefinitely because it's gorgeous. It's really aesthetically really attractive. In hand, it's extremely ergonomic. The contoured handle version of it is great. I love the contoured Guardian 4. I will say this. I looked at and tried out briefly at Blade HQ the contoured Guardian 3s. Not a big fan. Not a big fan. The grips were just a little too fat on those ones for me. So I like the thinner and less contoured knife for the Guardian 3, which is going to be a lighter duty knife anyway. Whereas for the 4, the contours are great. They're perfect for this size, and they feel really nice as you're working with that knife. So, what else can I say about it? There's just very little else. You can see there's a big lanyard hole right there that's just perfect. Full tang, obviously. The jimping on top is perfect. It's just a really good knife. That's basically the review, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful to you. I'm the Late Boy Scout. I do appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one.